He's just a slacker stealing his salary. That lunch befits the work he does, right? It was my welcome party after returning to the headquarters for the first time in 2 years. In front of my seat was a plain bento with just a small pickled plum in the center of white rice. Meanwhile, everyone else had luxurious grilled beef lunches. It didn't take me long to realize this was a jab from Mr. Smith, the company president. He had always called me a slacker stealing salary. The immense workload he piled on me couldn't possibly be completed without overtime. Yet he berated me for being slow and even demoted me to a branch office. The other employees raised their voices in protest against Mr. Smith's tyrannical words. However, Mr. Smith lashed out in anger, silencing everyone by threatening them with dismissal. He even made the absurd proposal of cutting salaries for every time we work overtime. I stood up quietly and left the meeting room. In the hallway, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. "Mr. Smith, this is the end of you." Little did I know then that my actions would trigger a massive scandal involving Mr. Smith and the fate of the company. My name is Henry. I work for a general trading company that's been gaining recognition lately. Until yesterday, I was stationed at a branch office, but I finally got the chance to return to the headquarters after 2 years. I woke up early, taking extra care with my appearance, styling my hair meticulously. The face staring back at me in the mirror reflected both anticipation and anxiety. All right, time to go. Take a deep breath and step out the front door. The train was packed with commuters and students as usual. Standing in the crowded train, I gazed at the scenery rushing past the window. The company I work for is called Global Trade Corporation. Its business areas include energy, metals, food, chemicals, and most recently, environmental business. Because we have branched out into such a wide range of fields, the importance of the information we handle is immeasurable. National-level confidential data, transaction details that could sway the global economy, security is paramount. 2 years ago, I was a star in the company's security department. I had unmatched confidence in my cybersecurity skills, which led to my being entrusted with significant responsibilities. My job was to protect global trade's confidential information, defending the company's systems against cyber attacks and industrial espionage both domestically and internationally. In essence, I was practically running the security operations by myself. It was challenging work with immense responsibility, but I took pride in being trusted with it. My official title is Information Security Specialist. More than just an engineer, I was responsible for planning and executing the company-wide security strategy. The scope of my work was extensive. Some of my colleagues didn't always understand what I did. They'd often ask, "Why are you so worked up when nothing's happened?" But I knew better. Nothing happens because we work hard to prevent it. There's an incident I'll never forget. Back in college, a small company where I worked part-time suffered a cyber attack. Customer data was leaked, and the company went bankrupt. Many people lost their jobs. The president, Mr. Nelson's disappointed face, the hopeless expressions of the employees. I'll never forget that scene, even now. The thought, if only they had proper security measures, etched itself deeply into my heart. If security is breached even once, a company's trust can be obliterated in an instant. If a customer's important information is leaked, it cannot be recovered. That's why, no matter how exhausting it gets or how little understanding I receive from others, I continue protecting security. But one day, out of nowhere, I was transferred to a regional branch. The reason was never made clear, but it was obvious that the newly appointed president, Mr. Smith, didn't like me. I recall him listing complaints like excessive overtime or high costs. Global Trade Corporation had always been a company that prioritized IT since its founding. The first president, Mr. Anderson, was a former engineer who deeply understood the importance of systems. Under his leadership, investments in security were generous, and employees felt safe working there. However, with Mr. Anderson's sudden retirement, Mr. Smith took over. Coming from a sales background, he had little knowledge of systems or security. To him, the IT department was just a cost center. Once Mr. Smith took office, the company's atmosphere drastically changed. Efficiency. Cut costs. Those became his favorite phrases. The IT department, in particular, faced harsh criticism. He dumped an enormous workload on us while demanding us to leave on time. Security is invisible. There's no need to waste money on it, he openly declared. Security budgets were cut one after another, while investments in the sales department increased. As the company's sole security expert, I grew deeply concerned about the situation. Yet, under Mr. Smith's policies, I was assigned more and more system development tasks unrelated to security. Henry, it's time to stop your security hobby. Starting tomorrow, help with this new system development. With those words, I had no choice but to juggle additional responsibilities outside of security. Naturally, security work had to be postponed, forcing me into a cycle of working late into the night. More overtime? Are you trying to bleed the company dry? Mr. Smith sneered at me while continuing to pile on unreasonable demands. Other employees weren't spared either, everyone bore exhausted expressions. As resignations began to mount, the burden on remaining staff increased even more. But Mr. Smith merely dismissed it with, "If they're useless, it's only natural they quit. The rest of you will manage." The entire company was deteriorating, and the vibrant spirit we once had was fading away. Amidst this, I gritted my teeth and kept up with security work. I truly believed it was the only way to protect the company. To Mr. Smith, however, it was nothing more than pointless overtime. That night, I stayed late again. The pale blue glow of the monitor cast eerie shadows in the dark office. Damn it, this virus is persistent. The sound of my keystrokes was the only thing breaking the silence. I was feverishly typing code, battling against a new type of virus. If it infiltrated the company's network, confidential data would be exposed. That was a catastrophe I had to prevent at all costs. When I glanced at the clock, it was already past 10 p.m. Rubbing my tired eyes, I took a sip of coffee. The bitterness of the cold coffee spread across my tongue. "Hey, still at it?" A sudden voice broke the silence behind me. Turning around, I saw Mr. Smith, who had recently taken over the company, standing there. I wondered, why is he here at this hour? But he probably missed the last train after a night of drinking. The faint smell of alcohol makes it easy to imagine. Yes, I'm working on countermeasures for a new virus. Ha, desperate to rack up overtime pay, huh? His words made me instinctively furrow my brow. Mr. Anderson, the former president, would never have spoken like this. Instead, he would have acknowledged my efforts with a "thank you for your hard work." But ever since Mr. Smith took the helm, the company's atmosphere had completely changed. Under the banner of efficiency, the demands on employees had grown increasingly harsh. No, sir. I want to leave early, too. But this virus poses a significant threat, and I don't want to hear your excuses. He interrupted, waving my explanation away. The look in his eyes was full of disdain. It's just your lack of ability, isn't it? Not being able to finish during work hours is proof you're incompetent. Maybe I should have someone else handle it. His words struck a nerve. Sure, I might be slower than others. But that's because I prioritize doing things carefully and thoroughly. In security, there's no room for compromise. That's my core belief. You grew up in a single-parent household, didn't you? His sudden change of topic caught me off guard. I vaguely remembered mentioning it at a drinking party once. Yes. My father passed away when I was young. Ah, I see. So, what does your mom think about you scraping by like this? Or was life so hard she told you to do whatever it takes to make ends meet? His smug grin was laced with malice, and anger surged through me. I couldn't tolerate anyone insulting my mother. But losing my temper here would mean losing the battle. I took a deep breath and forced myself to stay composed. My mother has nothing to do with this. And this isn't about making money. This is important work to protect the company. Oh, how noble. Then tell me this, why are you the only one working this late? Everyone else leaves on time. That's because, to be honest, there are only 3 of us, including me, who can handle the company's security. For a company of this size, that's far too few. Enough with the excuses. He waved dismissively again. The bottom line is, you can't handle the tasks assigned to you. Are you really doing this for the company? To me, it looks like you're just here to milk the overtime pay. That's not true. Listen, overtime is a loss for the company. Inefficient workers are nothing but dead weight. It was no use. Explaining the reality to him wouldn't make a difference. He was unreasonable to begin with, and he was drunk on top of that. Expecting a rational conversation was pointless. As I hesitated to respond, Mr. Smith let out a long sigh. All right, I get it. You're useless to this company. What? Starting tomorrow, you're being transferred to a regional branch. You'll have plenty of time to take it easy there. Work all the overtime you want, congratulations. His words left me stunned. My mind went blank. A transfer? To a regional branch? My work only held value here at the headquarters. But, Mr. Smith, the security work. Shut up. It's already decided. If you've got a problem with it, just quit. I'm being generous letting you off with a transfer. And you're still whining? Mr. Smith spat those words before storming out of the office. I sat there in stunned silence, watching his back as he disappeared down the hallway. In his retreating figure, I could see the shadow of someone corrupted by power, devoid of humanity. My mind was a blur, unable to process anything. His words echoed repeatedly in my head. Incompetent. Dead weight. Useless. Why? Why did I have to be treated like this after working so hard? Had I done something wrong? My eyes drifted to the photo of my mother on my desk. Her smiling face stared back at me. I had worked tirelessly to protect that smile. Mom, what should I do? I whispered, collapsing into my chair. The clock on the wall ticked forward mercilessly. In the end, I was sent to a rural branch. Now, 2 years later, I've been called back to the headquarters. The reason? A security issue at headquarters. Honestly, my feelings are mixed. I'm glad my skills are needed, but there's also a bitter why now lingering in my mind. As the train arrived at the station near the company, I got off. The familiar view of the station front brought a wave of nostalgia. Skyscrapers lined the streets of the business district. Among them, the Global Trade Corporation headquarters stood tall, as if welcoming me back. When I arrived at the company, a familiar face greeted me in the lobby. Welcome back, Henry. It was Kelly, her cheerful voice breaking through the tension. She had been my mentor when I was new and now held a significant position at the headquarters. Kelly, it's been a while. How have you been? I've been fine. But things have been tough in the security department since you left. I'm so glad you're finally back. Her words made me feel a little bashful. Was it really that bad without me? Of course. Since your transfer, security issues have been on the rise, especially with international operations. The risk of data leaks has grown. And no one could properly handle it. Her expression darkened. I was about to say something when other colleagues noticed me. It's Henry. Welcome back. We've been waiting for you. Everyone, thank you. I'm back. Everyone welcomes me warmly. Seeing their smiles, I feel a bit of my anxiety fade away. It really was the right decision to come back. This is where I belong. No matter the challenges, I could do this here. Or so I thought. Well, looks like the slacker has finally returned. A cold voice cut through our conversation. Turning around, I saw Mr. Smith standing there, his gaze as icy as ever. Mr. Smith. I instinctively lowered my voice. His eyes were just as contemptuous as they had been 2 years ago, filled with the same cold disdain. Henry, we brought you back because there's no one else suited for the job. But don't get the wrong idea, I won't tolerate your wasteful overtime this time. Mr. Smith's sharp words made Kelly furrow her brows. What are you saying, Mr. Smith? The reason Henry was called back is because the security here is in danger. We need his expertise. Mr. Smith scoffs at Kelly's objection. That's true. But only because Henry is incompetent. He couldn't work efficiently and ended up piling on overtime. I won't allow such indulgence this time. Mr. Smith's words made me want to argue back. But I knew better. If I said anything unnecessary, I might be reassigned again. That would be disastrous for the company's security. For the sake of everyone here, I clenched my teeth and stayed silent. Understood, Mr. Smith. I'll do my best to work efficiently. Mr. Smith nodded in satisfaction at my words. Good. Oh, and I hear there's a welcome party for you in 2 weeks. Don't get too excited. With those parting words, he left. Kelly placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Are you okay? Yeah, somehow. I gave a wry smile. I hadn't expected such a harsh reception right after returning to the headquarters. Henry, everyone here is truly happy to have you back. Well, everyone except Mr. Smith, Kelly said with a small sigh. He just doesn't want to admit that transferring you was his mistake. Her words eased my heart a little. Thank you, Kelly. No, thank you for coming back. Kelly led me into the office, and nothing had changed since 2 years ago. That familiarity made the memories of my reassignment feel as fresh as yesterday. Henry. Wait. I turned around to see Kelly running toward me, her expression serious. Kelly, who had been my mentor when I was new, was also known as the most beautiful and respected figure in the office. Mr. Smith is being completely unreasonable. He doesn't understand how important your work is. I gave her a wry smile. Well, it's just the way things are. Security is a behind-the-scenes job, after all. That's not true. Kelly's voice grew slightly louder. I'm going to explain to Mr. Smith just how crucial your work is. Please don't. I interrupted, alarmed. I can't let you get dragged into this. Kelly paused, taking a deep breath to calm herself. Henry, there's something I've been meaning to tell you. I've never forgotten what happened back then, she said softly. Back then? Yes, during the massive cyber attack 3 years ago. I felt a chill run down my spine. That incident was unforgettable for me too. Everyone was in a state of panic. The company's systems were crashing one after another, and no one knew what to do. Kelly's voice trembled. I remember. It was a chaotic time. But you were different. Her eyes sparkled as she spoke. You stayed calm, analyzed the situation, and gave precise instructions. The memories of that day flooded back. I had been desperate to protect the company, doing everything I could. But I thought I was just doing what anyone in my position would do. You worked through the night to stop the attack and even proposed strategies to strengthen security afterward. Well, it's just my job. No, it's not. Kelly shook her head. The way you handled things back then left an impression on me. You didn't just fix the problem, you learned from the experience and worked to build a stronger system. That attitude inspired me. Her serious expression left me speechless. Since then, I've tried to follow your example, to approach every problem with a positive mindset and see challenges as opportunities to grow. I learned that from you. Kelly. That's why I want to help you this time. I'll talk to Mr. Smith about the importance of your work. I don't want you to face this battle alone. I was deeply moved. I never imagined my actions could influence someone else's growth. Thank you, Kelly. But really, your words are more than enough. I'll manage. She looked slightly dissatisfied but eventually nodded. I just feel so powerless, like I can't do anything. That's not true. Hearing this from you has encouraged me so much. It gives me the strength to keep going. Really? Yes. I'll do my best so we can meet again under better circumstances. You keep giving it your all too. We exchanged smiles. In that moment, I felt it deeply. My work wasn't meaningless. It was understood and appreciated, and it had made an impact. That realization gave me the courage to face the challenges ahead. When I arrived at the regional branch, I was greeted by the branch manager, Harvey Thompson. Henry, thank you for coming. We need your expertise here. Harvey's kind words gave me a small sense of relief. But when I recall what happened at the headquarters, my chest tightens. I'll do my best. I replied, a bit awkwardly. Harvey lightly patted my shoulder. I've heard about your struggles at the headquarters. But here, I want you to fully utilize your talents. His words sparked a flicker of hope within me. Henry, we've received a security consulting request from some local small businesses. I'd like you to take the lead on it. How about it? Really? Are you serious? My voice unintentionally became lively. Of course. With your experience and knowledge, I know you'll come up with outstanding solutions. His trust made me feel a renewed sense of determination. Harvey continued to assign me meaningful and rewarding tasks. Henry, our branch systems are getting outdated. I'd like you to handle a complete overhaul. Are you sure? Is that okay? Absolutely. I trust you to build the best system for us. Harvey's words sparked my motivation. One evening, as I worked late, Harvey stopped by my desk. Henry, you've been working hard. But don't forget to take a break now and then. I know, but there's still so much to do. I get it. Your dedication is admirable. But tomorrow is Saturday, and there's a local festival. Why don't we go together? His invitation took me by surprise. Are you sure? With me? Of course. I'd like to talk about things other than work. Plus, getting to know the community is important. It might even help with your future security consulting. His thoughtful words made me laugh. Got it. I'd love to go. At the festival the next day, Harvey introduced me to many people from the local community. The connections I made there would later prove invaluable in my consulting work. Harvey didn't just support me professionally, he also guided me in building relationships. Thanks to his warm mentorship and trust, I gradually regained my confidence. The branch office, which I once saw as a punishment, transformed into a place where I could discover new possibilities. Henry, I'm looking forward to your growth. The experiences you gain here will undoubtedly be valuable for your future. Let's keep working hard together. His words left a deep impression on me. Life at the branch turned out to be far more fulfilling than I had imagined. Still, I occasionally thought about Kelly and the headquarters. Was she doing okay? Was the security at headquarters holding up? These thoughts often kept me up at night. 2 years passed in this manner. One day, my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number. Hello, this is Henry. Henry, it's been a while. The voice on the other end was Kelly's. Kelly? What's going on? It's serious, the headquarters system has been hacked. Her voice was a mixture of panic and anxiety. Tell me everything. As she explained the situation, I felt a fire ignite within me. This was the exact vulnerability I had warned about 2 years ago. The consequences of Mr. Smith ignoring my proposed countermeasures had finally come to fruition. Understood. I'll head back immediately. After hanging up the phone, I headed straight to Harvey. When I explained the situation, Harvey nodded quietly. I've also been contacted by the headquarters. They're asking to have you back. Go, Henry. They need your expertise. With his encouragement, I returned to the headquarters. There, I reunited with Kelly and received a full briefing from the current security team. The next day, I threw myself into the task of saving the company. My resolve to fix this mess was stronger than ever. 2 weeks after returning to the headquarters, I opened the meeting room door and stepped inside. They were throwing a welcome party for me during today's lunch break. The host? Mr. Smith. I entered the room with mixed feelings. All the other colleagues were already seated. On the table were rows of bento boxes. As I looked for my seat, Mr. Smith's voice called out, "Hey, Henry. That's your seat." When I turned around at Mr. Smith's voice, I saw him pointing at my seat. Sitting there was a small, plain rice bento box. While the other employees had lavish barbecue bento boxes, it was obvious something was off with me being the only one given such a modest meal. "Since it's your welcome party, we splurged a bit," Mr. Smith said with a wide grin. The mismatch between his cheerful tone and the lunch in front of me was too blatant. I couldn't help but frown. Mr. Smith." Before I could say anything, one of the employees, unable to bear the awkward tension, spoke up. "Sir, wasn't there a mistake with Henry's lunch? I'm not that hungry today, can we swap?" "Ah, it's fine. I did it on purpose, Mr. Smith answered with a sly grin. This guy is just a slacker. Doesn't this lunch match his level of effort? The air in the conference room instantly froze at his words. I couldn't hold back my anger, my clenched fists were trembling. There's no hope for him. While I struggled to contain my rage, another colleague stood up. "Mr. Smith, that's uncalled for. If Henry weren't here, our security system wouldn't even function properly." Exactly. Everyone started speaking up, voicing their anger on my behalf. They understood me. That alone made me feel vindicated. Mr. Smith couldn't possibly ignore this many warnings from the group. "After you brought Henry back, to treat him like this." Mr. Smith's face gradually turned red. Suddenly, he slammed the table hard. "Shut up already." His outburst made everyone flinch. "Dragging out overtime just because you're from a poor single-parent household? That's unacceptable." His words sent a chill through the entire room. "Bringing up my personal life, how low could he go? You're not worth this company's money. You're just wasting resources." Mr. Smith continued with a cruel smirk. "Security, efficiency, whatever. Your overtime is nothing but a burden to this company." Mr. Smith's words cast a heavy silence over the meeting room. No one had the courage to defend me. "Now eat it. That plain bento is more than enough for a pauper like you. And if anyone else has a problem, I'll fire you on the spot." Mr. Smith stood up, glaring at the employees as he barked. "All of you are replaceable. Got it? Is this what a president is supposed to be like?" Everyone, including me, was too stunned to say anything. Mr. Smith grinned smugly and sat back down. "Come on, eat up. It's getting cold." Reluctantly, everyone began opening their bento box in silence. I, too, opened the lid of my bento box. As expected, it was just plain white rice and a single pickled plum. "Henry, how is it? Looks delicious, doesn't it?" Mr. Smith sneered as he spoke. "Thank you," I replied through gritted teeth. "That's the spirit. A useless guy like you deserves no better." His words darkened the expressions of the other colleagues. But no one dared to say anything. The fear of losing their jobs kept their mouths shut. I silently began eating my lunch. The bland taste of plain rice and a pickled plum. But this was my reality. Seeing me eat the plain lunch seemed to put Mr. Smith in a good mood. Crossing his arms, he spoke cheerfully. Listen up. It's the era of efficiency now. You tech guys in the systems department better pay attention. Mr. Smith chuckled mockingly as he continued. Overtime is an outdated concept. People who can't work efficiently won't survive in today's society. Understand? Mr. Smith scanned the room with an intimidating glare. Sales is different. They bring in the work, they earn the money. But what about you in the systems department? You're nothing but a drain on resources. Mr. Smith's voice gradually grows louder. Spending so much on things like security, on invisible nonsense. You just sit there, taking it easy in front of your computers. Start contributing more to the company. He slammed his hand on the table for emphasis. Wait. I've got a brilliant idea. From now on, every time overtime happens, I'll dock your pay. That way, no one will waste time with unnecessary tasks, and inefficient workers will have no choice but to shape up. Mr. Smith began to laugh with satisfaction. Sales staff, on the other hand, are out late hosting clients. Compared to that, what you do is easy, you're just glued to your screens. He continued his tirade with a mocking tone. Systems? Outsource it. There's no reason to keep such an expensive department in-house. You're all just a burden to this company. Got it? Mr. Smith let out a loud laugh. Ah, I should have thought of this sooner. Now the company will be more efficient. The money sales brings in won't be wasted on pointless departments like yours anymore. Ha ha ha. The employees listened to Mr. Smith's words in stunned silence. The faces of the system department staff showed a mix of anger and resignation. In an atmosphere where only one person seemed excited, everyone, including me, quietly ate their lunch. I slowly closed the empty bento box after finishing my meal. This ends here. I'm putting a stop to it. Excuse me. I stood up quietly. No one looked at me. Everyone kept their eyes on their lunches, unwilling to meet my gaze. The oppressive atmosphere Smith had created weighed heavily on the room. Hey, Henry. Where do you think you're going? Mr. Smith snapped, glaring at me. The restroom. Hurry back. You've still got a mountain of work to finish. Oh, and this is supposed to be your welcome party, right? Whatever. Work's more important for a slowpoke like you. Ignoring his words, I left the meeting room. Out in the hallway, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. After explaining my request and ending the call, I let out a deep breath. Everything is going to change now. As I turned to head back to the meeting room, a voice called out behind me. Henry. When I turned around, Kelly was standing there. Concern was evident in her eyes. Are you okay? I could hear Mr. Smith's rant from outside the room. His behavior is absolutely unacceptable. I'm fine. I'm sorry for making you worry. Henry, while you were gone, everyone's been crushed under the workload he's dumped on us. And when we end up working overtime, we get treated like that. Several people have already quit. If this continues, the company would. Kelly's voice carried a mix of anger and sadness. I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I'm sure everything will be fine now. At that moment, James, a junior member of the IT team, came running toward us, panic written all over his face. Henry. It's an emergency. His face was pale, beads of sweat visible on his brow. What happened? Calm down and tell me. The company's security system. It's been hacked. Data is being deleted. A chill ran down my spine. The worst-case scenario had just become reality. I understand. Let's handle it right now. We hurried back into the meeting room. Inside the meeting room, chaos was already brewing. Each employee stared at their laptop screens, which were displaying glitchy messages, clear signs of a hack. What the hell is going on? Mr. Smith shouts angrily. The security system has been breached. Company data is being erased. What? Mr. Smith's face turned a furious shade of red. Henry! Fix this. Now! I immediately sat down at a terminal, analyzing the situation as fast as I could. The state of the system was dire. Damn it! I grind my teeth. This response is far too late. What do you mean, too late? What the hell did I bring you back for, you useless fool? Mr. Smith yells furiously. First, I needed to assess the situation accurately. I asked calmly, keeping my composure. Mr. Smith. I left a detailed security response manual when I was transferred. Did you follow any of the recommended protocols? Mr. Smith's eyes darted nervously, betraying his guilt. That thing? It was just a waste of time, it would have only increased overtime. So, you did nothing. My voice cold as steel. Shut up. Just fix it. If you can't resolve this, you're fired. His declaration silenced the room. Then, Kelly's calm yet resolute voice broke through the tension. If Henry is fired, I'll resign as well. What? I couldn't help but blurt out in surprise. One by one, others began to speak up. I'll quit too. Same here. Henry has always worked hard for us. There's no way we can let him be fired. If he is unjustly dismissed, we'll leave this company too. Everyone stood firmly by my side. Hearing my colleague's words, Mr. Smith's face grew redder and redder. What the hell? You ungrateful lot. Have you all forgotten what this company has done for you? He was visibly losing it. Fine. If that's how it is, you're all fired. I'll bring in better employees, people who are more competent. Money can buy replacements anytime. Mr. Smith's almost maniacal scream echoed through the meeting room. At that moment, a calm voice cut through the tension. The one who's getting fired is you. I turned around, and there stood Harvey. 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 What are you doing here? Can't you see we're in the middle of something? I'm here on urgent business, actually. Henry contacted me. I couldn't hide my surprise. Seeing Harvey, I was certain that this chaotic situation was about to change completely. Mr. Smith, his face bright red, shouted angrily. Harvey didn't flinch. He spoke firmly and decisively. The board members of both the headquarters and branch offices have unanimously decided to dismiss Mr. Smith as president. What? That's absurd. You can't do this to me. This is no joke. Mr. Smith, your tyrannical management policies, the unreasonable working conditions you forced on employees, and the embezzlement of company funds. We have all the evidence. The conference room fell silent. Everyone was at a loss for words. Embezzlement? He went that far? I watched the tense exchange between Harvey and Mr. Smith, my emotions a mix of shock and relief. The tension in the room felt like the air had frozen solid. Evidence? There's no such thing. Mr. Smith's voice trembled. Harvey nodded calmly and pulled a USB drive from his pocket. Everything is recorded here. Mr. Smith, you've misused company funds for personal gain and treated employees unfairly. You are no longer fit to run this company. At that moment, memories from the past came flooding back. Harvey's days at the headquarters. It was 4 years ago. Henry, I'm truly impressed with your work. I vividly recalled the day Harvey, then an executive at the head office, spoke to me. Back then, everyone believed he was the natural choice to be the next president, both a brilliant businessman and a man of integrity. Thank you, Harvey. Employees like you, who understand and implement the importance of security, are invaluable. Never lose sight of your convictions. His words were a great encouragement to me. Harvey always put the well-being of employees first and managed with a clear vision for the future. But his principles must have been a thorn in Mr. Smith's side. One day, Harvey's sudden demotion was announced. It left many employees shocked and unsettled. Shortly after, Mr. Smith was appointed as the new president. Efficiency is key. Cut all unnecessary expenses. Mr. Smith's policies treated employees like disposable objects. The complete opposite of Harvey's approach. Overtime pay reductions, cuts to security investments, and even my own transfer to a remote branch office. What was unfolding now before my eyes felt like the wheel of fate had begun to turn in reverse. Harvey, you've always been a thorn in my side. I sent you away, so why are you here? Harvey answered calmly. I came back for the sake of this company and its employees. Do you have any idea how much your management has hurt people? I gazed at Harvey's back. He reminded me of the time when he used to mentor me back at the headquarters. I remembered our reunion at the regional office. Henry, it's been a while. Harvey warmly welcomed me when I transferred to the branch. Yes. Harvey. I never expected to see you here. You've had it tough, haven't you? But don't give up. Your skills are truly valuable. His words almost brought me to tears. I had felt defeated at the head office and had lost my confidence. But Harvey's encouragement reignited the passion I had buried within. Thank you. I'll try my best again. That's the spirit. And if anything ever happens, don't hesitate to reach out. I'll be here for you. Now, just as promised, Harvey appeared. To save me from my predicament. I returned my focus to the present moment in the conference room. Mr. Smith, pale-faced, was yelling. This is fabricated. It's all a conspiracy. Mr. Smith's voice cracked. His face turned bright red, and his bloodshot eyes widened as he shouted. I'm the one who turned this company around. What could useless people like you possibly understand? Mr. Smith began throwing papers around the room like a madman. Harvey spoke calmly but firmly. You're right, Mr. Smith. You did temporarily improve the company's performance. But it was nothing more than a facade of prosperity. Mr. Smith shook his head furiously, but Harvey continued undeterred. In your pursuit of short-term profits, you sacrificed the health of your employees and the future of the company. By disregarding security and treating employees like disposable tools, you failed in what true leadership entails. True reform is about sustainable growth, creating an environment where employees can take pride in their work, and earning the trust of both customers and society. Your methods have undermined all of this. The room was utterly silent as everyone hung onto Harvey's words. Now, it's our responsibility to heal the damage you've caused and rebuild this company in the truest sense. Mr. Smith was at a loss for words, his shoulders slumping. There was a flicker of realization on his face, a hint that he was beginning to understand the errors of his ways. Mr. Smith, everything is on record. On record? What record? Even after you demoted me, I continued working for the company. And I slowly gathered evidence of your misconduct. Harvey explained quietly. I was originally the candidate for the next president, but you took that away. Even then, I questioned your management approach. After being sent to a branch office, I kept in contact with trusted employees at headquarters and continued collecting evidence. Mr. Smith shook his head violently. That's a lie. Who would cooperate with you? Many employees who suffered under your tyranny. They worked for justice. In a panic, Mr. Smith screamed, "You're all fired." Let this company burn." He stormed toward the exit. But as he opened the door, police officers were waiting. "We'd like to have a word with you." Mr. Smith collapsed to the floor. Harvey let out a deep sigh. "This isn't the way I wanted it to end." "Harvey, thank you." "Truly." I stepped toward Harvey. "It's not over yet, Henry. Not everything has been resolved." "Yes. That's right. I still had one major task ahead of me. It looks like we've been hacked. But I'm confident you can handle this crisis." Harvey turned to me. "Can you do it?" I nodded firmly. "Yes, I'll give it my all." I immediately turned to my computer and began countermeasures. But handling it alone would take too much time. I mobilized every available employee, assigning tasks quickly. Kelly and the others followed my instructions without hesitation. After several hours, the crisis was finally averted. We recovered most of the data and sealed the security breaches. Exhausted, we stood together as Harvey began to speak. "Everyone, thank you for your hard work. This incident has revealed serious flaws in our headquarters structure. From this moment forward, we will begin comprehensive reforms, temporarily under my leadership. Of course, the official next president will be determined by the board." Hope began to return to the faces of the employees. With Harvey, the company was bound to head in the right direction. I looked at him with admiration. Then our eyes met. At that moment, I noticed something. There was a special light in his gaze as he looked at me. Now, the real journey begins. Harvey addressed everyone in the conference room. "Let's restore this company to a place where employees can take pride in their work. Will you all join me in this effort?" A small but determined round of applause spread across the room from the gathered employees. I too clapped with all my heart. In that moment, I felt certain that I could play a significant role in this new chapter, and that I could once again fully utilize my skills and talents. As we exited the conference room, Kelly walked up beside me. "Henry, you were amazing." Her eyes sparkled with admiration. "No, it wasn't just me. It was thanks to everyone's effort." Kelly smiled gently. "Still, I don't think this change would have happened without you." I gave Kelly a slight nod and then followed the new president, Mr. Thompson. A new day awaited us, one full of promise for both this company and its people. From that day forward, the company began to change dramatically. What had felt like a hellish workplace just days earlier now felt like an entirely different environment. "Good morning, Henry." A cheerful voice called out to me. When I turned around, Kelly was there. Seeing the sparkle in her eyes, my heart began to beat a little faster. "Good morning, Kelly." For some reason, I couldn't help feeling a bit self-conscious. My relationship with Kelly had undergone a whirlwind of change in these past few days. From the moment she stood up for me during Mr. Smith's downfall, or perhaps from the day we first met, something had always been there between us. "Let's work hard again today," Kelly said, walking beside me. The subtle scent of her perfume wafted through the air. As we entered the office, the vibrant sounds of employees at work filled the space. The oppressive atmosphere from before had completely vanished, replaced by a sense of energy and purpose. I glanced around the office and found myself recalling the fate of the former president, Mr. Smith. His dismissal by the board, followed by his arrest by the authorities. Embezzlement, tax evasion, and harassment of employees, one crime after another came to light, leaving Mr. Smith with nothing but his shame. "Henry, if it weren't for you." Just before being shoved into the police car, he glared at me and spat those words. But no one paid him any heed anymore. After years of misconduct, the former president, Mr. Smith, was sentenced to prison. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison. It might seem like a light punishment for all the suffering he caused the company and its employees. But at least, the company was finally free from his oppressive reign. Now, we were about to embark on a new journey. "Henry, can I have a word?" The voice of the new president, Mr. Thompson, brought me back to the present. As expected, the board had officially chosen him to lead the company. With his leadership and integrity, he was the ideal choice. It was a logical decision, considering he should have taken the role 2 years ago. I nodded to Kelly and made my way to the president's office. "What can I do for you, Mr. Thompson?" "Ah, take a seat." He welcomed me with a warm, reassuring smile. His presence was as commanding as ever, but now there was a warmth about him, almost fatherly. "Henry, I want to entrust you with an important responsibility. As the head of our company's security division, I need you to lead a comprehensive security enhancement project, not just at headquarters, but company-wide, including the branch offices." I was so stunned I couldn't speak. Just weeks ago, I had been demoted to a remote branch, and now I was being offered one of the company's most critical roles. "Are you sure I'm the right person for this? There's no one better suited. Everyone acknowledges your abilities. And also," Mr. Thompson hesitated for a moment, "I believe in you." Those words carried a weight that I couldn't quite put into words. But now wasn't the time to dwell on it. "I understand. I'll give it everything I've got," I answered with conviction. "That's the spirit. Now, let's assemble a new project team right away. Let's have Kelly join the effort as well." At his words, my heart began to race again. Working alongside Kelly. Just the thought of it filled me with renewed motivation. When I returned to the office, Kelly greeted me with eager eyes. "How did it go?" "I've been assigned a new project. And you'll be part of it." "Really? That's amazing." Her radiant smile spread warmth through my entire being. This feeling, could it be love? That evening, we stayed late to draft plans for the new project. The sun had long since set, but the office buzzed with energy. "Henry, how does this look?" Kelly showed me the materials she had prepared. Her work was impeccable, even better than before. I found myself captivated by her diligence. "As expected from you, Kelly. Your knowledge of IT has improved so much, it's incredible." "Thank you. But it's because of you, Henry. Everything I've learned has been thanks to your guidance. No, it's your own hard work that deserves credit. But without you, Henry." Kelly's voice trembled. Our eyes met, and there was something unspoken between us, something deeper than words could convey. "Henry." She said my name softly. "Yes? I feel about Henry." Kelly's words trailed off. It was because I took her hand. "I feel the same way, Kelly." "Henry." We smiled at each other in that moment. It was the happiest moment of my life. That night, I fell asleep with a heart full of joy. Tomorrow, a new challenge awaited. And Kelly would be by my side. I couldn't imagine anything better. The next morning, I arrived at the office with a fresh sense of purpose. As I entered, Kelly was already there, waiting for me. "Good morning, Henry." Her voice carried a sweetness that was different from the day before. "Good morning, Kelly." As we exchanged greetings, slightly shy, the other employees seemed to notice the shift in our atmosphere. "All right, let's get started on the new project," I said to Kelly, my tone filled with determination. She nodded firmly. "Yes, let's do our best." From that day forward, our days were fulfilling, both professionally and personally. At work, we inspired each other to grow. In private, we nurtured our budding love. The company's atmosphere improved day by day, with everyone working enthusiastically. Half a year had passed since then. I was still leading the security department, facing new threats every day as usual. Today was the day for my regular security briefing with Mr. Thompson. This month had gone particularly well, with no major incidents. Thanks to everyone's dedication, our security measures were steadily improving. At the appointed time, I gathered my materials and headed to see him. This month, there were no incidents. The standardized procedures have allowed us to involve more people in addressing security measures. After I finished my report, Mr. Thompson nodded with satisfaction. I'm always impressed by your effort and ability to teach others. Keep it up. Thank you very much. My goal now wasn't just to protect the company on my own. The entire company must come together to strengthen security. Additionally, it's essential to train others who excel in technical skills, not just me. Under his leadership, I was confident it could be achieved. When I shared my goals for the coming term, Mr. Thompson patted me on the shoulder. His eyes glimmered with pride. You're the pride of this company. I'm sure your parents must be so proud of you too. His words brought a mix of emotions. Yes, my mother is very happy about my work here. But to be honest, I don't remember much about my father. I've been told he passed away when I was very young. For a moment, Mr. Thompson's expression stiffened. I see. He nodded, then paused, a look of deep thought crossing his face. Before I could ask, he swallowed hard and said, Henry, there's something I need to discuss with you. Once work settles down today, could you spare some time? Of course, sir. Late that evening, after finishing all the day's work, I joined Mr. Thompson at a traditional Japanese restaurant. I quietly walked across the floor, following Mr. Thompson. We were led to a private room at the very back. He sat formally, and I followed suit. For a while, we sat in silence, waiting for the food. The formality of the setting and the luxurious atmosphere were overwhelming. Is it really okay for me to be invited to a place like this? I had gone out for drinks with Mr. Thompson a few times during my time at the branch office. But never before had we been in such a solemn setting, with an atmosphere so tense. What could he possibly want to tell me? When the food arrived, sake was placed in front of each of us. Without a toast, Mr. Thompson finally spoke. Henry. His voice carried something unusual, a tone I had never heard from him before. I instinctively straightened my posture. There's something I must tell you. For years, I've dreaded this moment, but I can't run away any longer. Yes, what is it? His eyes held an emotion I had never seen in him, something complex and deeply personal. I held my breath, waiting for his next words. The truth is, I'm your biological father. In that instant, it felt like my entire world had come to a standstill. My mind went completely blank, unable to process what I had just heard. What? What do you mean? I forced the words out, but they barely escaped my throat. Mr. Thompson let out a deep sigh and continued. 25 years ago, shortly after you were born, I was entrusted with a major project at the company I worked for. It was a project that would shape the future of IT security in Japan. But, he paused, his voice faltering. His eyes reflected a deep sadness I had never seen before. A shadowy organization got involved in the project. They threatened me, demanding that I sell them the classified information. I refused outright. That's when they began to threaten your family's safety. You might not remember, but there was even an attempt to kidnap you. I gasped. My father's words were so shocking that I couldn't easily grasp them. It felt surreal, almost like something out of a movie. I had no choice. To protect you and your mother, I had to disappear. I explained everything to your mother and asked her to tell you and everyone else that I had died. I thought it was the only way to keep you safe. His voice trembled as he spoke. I was speechless. I had grown up believing my father was dead. Now, to find out it was all a lie, I didn't know what to believe anymore. But, why now? Why tell me this now? I managed to ask, my voice barely audible. The project was eventually a success, and the organization was dismantled. At that time, I thought I could return to my family. He sighed deeply. But reality wasn't so simple. He closed his eyes, as if reliving bitter memories. I came back when you were 10 years old. It had been 5 years since I left. But in those 5 years, a deep rift had formed between us. I listened intently, my breath caught in my chest. You hardly remembered me. Your mother, she tried to welcome me back, but we couldn't help but feel awkward around each other. His voice was laced with regret. I tried to protect you in my own way. I provided financial support, but eventually your mother began to refuse it, saying it was enough. Our feelings drifted apart, and in the end, we went our separate ways. His voice quivered. And suddenly, he bowed deeply before me. Henry, I'm sorry. I've been a terrible father. His voice was on the verge of breaking into sobs. I wasn't there to watch you grow up. I didn't hear your first words. I wasn't there to comfort you when you fell and cried. Every one of those moments I missed has torn me apart. My father raised his head and looked directly into my eyes. His eyes were filled with tears. When I found out you had stepped into the world of IT security, I felt both fear and pride at the same time. I thought, truly, you are my son. And yet, fate has a strange sense of irony. In this new company I joined, I never imagined I would cross paths with you. When you started working here, under me as my subordinate, I realized a selfish feeling had taken root inside me. A desire to do something fatherly, such a selfish wish. Henry, I am a terrible father. The actions I took to protect you and your mother only ended up hurting you both. And because of my own weakness, I interfered in your life more than I should have. My father looked straight into my eyes. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know the truth. I was at a loss for words. A whirlwind of emotions swirled in my chest: anger, sadness, and even sympathy. Why didn't you tell me sooner? My voice shook as I spoke. I was afraid. Afraid you wouldn't accept me. Regret was etched into every word he said. But I couldn't keep hiding it anymore. You've shown such sincerity and dedication to this company. I couldn't continue lying to someone I've come to admire so much. I'm proud of you, Henry. And, as your father, I want to be part of your life. I sat there, listening in silence. My mind was in chaos, but at the same time, I felt something fall into place. The sense of something missing in my life, the strange connection I had always felt with Mr. Thompson, it all made sense now. Everything had fallen into place. I need time. I said, my thoughts still jumbled. It's going to take time for me to process this. But I took a deep breath and steadied myself. I'm glad to know that you're my father. In that moment, I saw tears glisten in his eyes. Thank you, Henry, he said, his voice trembling. I hope we can slowly build a father-son relationship. Of course, at your pace. I nodded silently. I didn't know what the future would hold. But in this moment, for the first time in my life, I was facing my father. That alone was a significant step forward. What about Mom? I started to ask, but he nodded before I could finish. I'll speak to her tomorrow. For now, let's keep things the same at work. Of course. You've earned your place here on your own merits. That fact will never change. He smiled warmly. That smile, strangely enough, gave me a sense of comfort. But from now on, as your father, I'd like to watch over your growth. Not in the sense of favoritism at work, of course. Just as a parent observing from afar. I nodded again, understanding his sentiment. This night marked a turning point in my life. But it wasn't a bad change. On the contrary, it felt like the start of a future full of new possibilities. So, I hesitated before finally asking, from now on, can I call you Dad? Tears welled up in his eyes again. Yes, of course, Henry. That night, we talked for hours. About his past, my childhood and school days, my growth, and our plans for the future. Sometimes we cried, other times we laughed. We couldn't fill the 25-year gap in one night, but step by step, we began to build a bond as father and son. The next morning, as I arrived at work, Kelly approached me with a concerned look. "Henry, are you okay? I heard you went out with Mr. Thompson last night." I paused for a moment before answering. "I'm fine. Actually, we had a good conversation." She tilted her head, intrigued. "Really? That's good to hear. Thanks for worrying about me. I'll introduce you to someone soon." "Who?" "Mr. Thompson." "Ha? But I already know him." I couldn't help but laugh. I imagined her shock if I introduced Mr. Thompson as my father. It would certainly leave her stunned. My life had begun to change, even more profoundly than before. As I slowly built my relationship with my father, I also solidified my position as an expert in IT security at work. There were challenges along the way, but I had the strength to overcome them. The resilience I gained from my transfer to the remote branch, the ability to turn difficulties into opportunities, and the unity I found in working alongside my colleagues to overcome obstacles. The strength to believe in myself and those around me. These were the pillars that supported me. I had learned that while the past cannot be changed, the future is something I can shape with my own hands. No doubt, there will be many challenges ahead. But I'm no longer afraid. Because I have the power to overcome them. And because I have people who will stand by me and support me. What kind of brilliance can I bring to my life from now on? Finding that out might just become my new source of joy.